The grand hall of the capita shimmered with an ethereal glow, the bioluminescent structures pulsing gently with a soft blue light. It was a sight unlike anything the human diplomats had ever seen, a perfect blend of aorganic architecture and advanced technology. Towering crystalline pillars reached towards the sky, humming with an energy that was both alien and strangely inviting. At the center of the chamber, beneath an intricate mosaic depicting the union of stars, stood the ambassadors of two civilizations, one from Earth, one from Prime, brought together by the promise of cooperation. Ambassador Sarah Whitmore, dressed in the formal uniform of the Terran Republic, stepped forward and extended her hand. Her counterpart, High Speaker, observed the gesture for only a brief moment before mirroring it, their fingers brushing in a symbolic bond of unity. The assembled crowd, a mixture of humans and dignitaries, erupted in a gentle wave of applause, a soft sound produced by the subtle vibrations of the vocal structures. The moment was historic, the first true alliance between humanity and an extraterrestrial race. In the background, human engineers and scientists worked side by side, exchanging knowledge and refining technologies that would benefit both species. Holographic schematics flickered above workstations as discussions unfolded in a blend of English and the flowing, melodic tones of the language. Humans had brought their expertise in modular shipbuilding and energy production, while the offered knowledge of advanced bioengineering and sustainable. Together, they were pushing the boundaries of scientific discovery. Beyond the political and scientific exchange, another form of cooperation was taking place. On the outskirts of the city, human soldiers trained alongside their counterparts, their differing styles of combat meshing into something new. The taller and more slender than humans relied on speed and precision, their energy blades flashing through the air with deadly elegance. The human troops, clad in adaptive armor, demonstrated endurance and brute force, moving with calculated aggression. Their instructors watched closely, impressed by how quickly each side adapted to the other's techniques. John Carter, a decorated Republic Marine, observed from the sidelines as one of his men sparred with a warrior. The soldier barely managed to parry a strike before getting swept off his feet by an acrobatic maneuver. Carter smirked and clapped the stand Marine on the back. "Don't feel bad, son. They've got centuries of experience on us. Learn from it." The warrior bowed slightly, acknowledging the compliment, before helping the Marine to his feet. As the day's events unfolded, whispers began to spread among both humans and scout ships patrolling the outer systems had detected unusual movements in deep space, fleeting shadows at the edges of known territory, signals that faded before they could be fully analyzed. Some dismissed it as sensor malfunctions or natural cosmic phenomena. Others were not so sure. Later that evening, as the formal ceremonies came to a close, Ambassador Whitmore and High Speaker stood alone on a balcony overlooking the capital city. The stars above shimmered in a vast celestial tapestry, untouched by war or conflict. Whitmore took a deep breath, savoring the quiet moment. "I have to say," she admitted, "when humanity first stepped onto the galactic stage, we weren't sure what to expect. We were prepared for hostility, prepared for anything, really. We never thought we'd find friends." Turned his gaze toward her, his violet eyes reflecting the city lights. "Friendship is rare in the cosmos, Ambassador. We have seen empires rise and fall, wars waged for greed, for survival, for vengeance. But we have also seen species come together, united by something greater than themselves. I believe your people are capable of such unity." Whitmore nodded. "We are. But we're also capable of destruction." She hesitated for a moment before continuing. "There are reports of unusual activity near the outer colonies. Unidentified ships, strange energy signatures. Nothing concrete yet," but she trailed off, watching reaction. The High Speaker's expression darkened, his usually serene demeanor giving way to concern. "We have heard similar reports. Something stirs in the ward, Ambassador. Something old." Before Whitmore could respond, A distant explosion lit up the horizon, a brilliant flash followed by a deep, rumbling shockwave that sent ripples through the city's energy fields. Alarms blared throughout the capita as security drones took to the skies, scanning for the source of the disturbance. A Republic officer sprinted onto the balcony, his face pale. "Ambassador, we have a situation. One of our outposts just went dark. No distress signal, no warning, just gone." Straightened, his voice calm but firm. "This is no coincidence." Whitmore clenched her jaw, already issuing orders through her communicator. The moment of peace, of unity, had been shattered. Whatever was lurking in the darkness had just made its first move. The command center of the Terran Republic outpost was bathed in the cold glow of emergency lights, the usual hum of operations replaced by an eerie silence. Tactical officers moved swiftly between workstations, scanning for any sign of the missing colony. Satellite feeds flickered uselessly, unable to penetrate the void where the settlement had once been. Ambassador Sarah Whitmore stood rigid, arms crossed as she watched the holographic display of the lost sector. A vast emptiness where hundreds of thousands of people had lived just hours ago. Beside her, High Speaker remained motionless, his violet eyes narrowing as he studied the anomaly. Admiral Decker's grizzled voice cut through the tension. "We sent a recon team to investigate the last-known coordinates. No wreckage, no debris. It's as if the entire colony was never there." His fingers tacked against the edge of the console. This wasn't an attack. It was something else. John Carter, clad in combat armor, exhaled sharply. "What the hell does that mean, Admiral? We taking some kind of weapon?" Decker shook his head. "If it was a conventional weapon, there would be something left. But our sensors aren't picking up anything. No radiation, no signatures, not even residual heat." He turned to the High Speaker. "Have they ever seen anything like this?" Expression was unreadable as he stepped forward, his long fingers trailing over the holographic projection. "There are ancient records of entire worlds vanishing, but they were dismissed as myths." He paused. "Legends speak of an unseen force that does not conquer through war but erases its enemies from existence." The room fell silent. Even the hardened soldiers who had seen the worst of war exchanged uneasy glances. Whitmore's jaw tightened. "We need answers. If this is some kind of weapon, we have to know how it works before it's turned on us again." Decker nodded. "I've already scrambled a fleet to the sector. But we need more than brute force. We need information." He turned to John. "Carter, I'm assigning you a strike team to investigate the anomaly. Get in, gather intel, and get out. We can't fight something we don't understand." Carter gave a sharp nod. "Understood, sir." He glanced at Whitmore. "You should return to Earth, Ambassador. If this thing escalates, we'll need leadership ready to respond." Whitmore shook her head. "I'm not going anywhere until I know what we're up against." Decker sighed. "Figured you'd say that." He turned back to the tactical map. "Then let's get to work." Hours later, aboard the warship Resolute, Carter's strike team prepared for their mission. The drop bay was a hive of activity, soldiers loading weapons, engineers calibrating drones, pilots running final checks on their shutters. The air was thick with tension, every man and woman aware that they were stepping into the unknown. Carter secured his helmet, his voice steady despite the unease in his gut. "Listen up. We're heading into the anomaly blind, so we assume scenario. No unnecessary risks. If anything seems off, we pull out." Understood. A chorus of affirmations echoed through the bay. The shutter launch was smooth, the craft slipping into the darkness of space stirred the coordinates of the vanished colony. As they approached, the sensors remained eerily silent. No energy readings, no planetary mass, just an absence where a thriving world had once been. The emptiness was more disturbing than any battlefield Carter had ever seen. "This doesn't make sense," one of the tech officers murmured, scanning the displays. "There should be something here. Even if the planet was destroyed, we'd see dust, asteroids, something." A sudden ripple cut through the void, an unnatural distortion that made the stars themselves seem to flicker. The ship's warning systems flared, but there was nothing to lock onto. "Hold formation," Carter ordered, gripping the armrest of his seat. "Scan for anything, movement, energy fluctuations, gravitational shifts." A voice crackled over the comms, strained with disbelief. "Sir, we're picking up whispers." Carter frowned. "Explain." The technician hesitated. "It's not a normal transmission. It's layered. Like multiple voices speaking at once, but not in any known language. It's faint, but it's there." Carter exchanged a glance with the pilot. "Can we trace it?" "Already trying." The technician's fingers flew over the controls. "It's bouncing, shifting frequencies, but wait. There." A new blip appeared on the scanner, a faint energy signature, barely detectable. "Move in," Carter ordered. The shutter drifted closer, its lights cutting through the void. And then, from the darkness, something emerged. It was not a ship. It was not debris. It was wrong. A shifting mass of shadow and light, something that twisted impossibly, as if it existed outside of normal space. The human mind struggled to comprehend its shape. Every glance seemed to reveal something different. A low hum filled the ship, a resonance that made bones ache and thoughts blur. The whispers grew louder. "Sir," the tech officer's voice was barely a whisper. "It sees us." The thing moved. The ship shuddered as if struck, alarms screaming. Systems flickered, gravity faltered. Carter grabbed onto his seat, shouting orders, but his voice barely reached his own ears over the growing noise. The void itself seemed to be pulling at them, dragging them toward something unseen. "Get us out of here," Carter roared. The pilot fought the controls, engines flaring as the ship wrenched itself away from the Anomaly's pull. The thing lingered, its form shifting as if observing them. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, it vanished. The silence that followed was deafening. Carter forced his breathing to steady, his heart hammering in his chest. "Tell me we recorded that." The tech officer nodded shakily. "We got it, but sir, I don't think this is something we can fight." Carter clenched his jaw. "Maybe not. But we damn well need to find out what it is." As the shutter sped back to the fleet, one thing was clear. Humanity had just encountered something beyond war, beyond reason. And for the first time, they were not the hunters. The halls of the Terran Republic's War Council chamber were silent, save for the faint hum of holographic projections illuminating the room. A massive star map hovered in the air, displaying the region where the colony had disappeared. Tactical officers and military strategists surrounded the table, their faces tense with unease. Admiral Decker stood at the head, his expression grim as he reviewed the data recovered from Carter's recon mission. Beside him, Ambassador Sarah Whitmore folded her arms, her gaze fixed on the shifting anomaly that had devoured an entire world. High Speaker of the stood at the opposite end, his elongated fingers pressed together in contemplation. The room was filled with the weight of a war no one had anticipated. "The recordings confirm it," Decker said finally, his voice heavy. "It's not a weapon. It's not a fleet. It's something else entirely." He turned to Carter, who stood near the display, but composed. "What else can you tell us?" Carter exhaled, recalling the whispers, the shifting entity that had gazed into them as though they were insignificant. It wasn't just an anomaly. It was aware of us. And the moment we got too close, it tried to pull us in. He looked at the gathered officers. "Sir, this isn't an enemy in the way we understand. It doesn't attack. It doesn't invade. It erases." A murmur spread through the room. One of the intelligence officers, Lieutenant Park, adjusted her datapad. "The energy fluctuations in the recordings don't match any known technology or natural phenomena. There's no destruction, no impact, no residual radiation. It's as if the entire colony was removed from existence." Ambassador Whitmore took a step forward. "Then the real question is why?" Who had remained silent, finally spoke. "Because it is a force beyond our comprehension. Your people are not the first to encounter such things, nor will you be the last. He gestured to the map, his expression unreadable. There are ancient records among my kind of civilizations that flourished, expanded, and then simply ceased. There was no war, no famine. They were simply gone. His eyes narrowed. We assumed they fell to internal conflict or some unseen catastrophe. But now, I am not so certain. Decker's jaw tightened. You're saying this thing has been out there all along? Nodded. Perhaps waiting. Perhaps watching. Silence fell again. The implications were chilling. Humanity had faced war, famine, and even near extinction at the hands of its own kind. But this was something different. Something without motive, without mercy, without reason. Carter broke the silence. If this thing is out there, and it has the power to erase entire civilizations, then we have to find out what it wants. We can't fight something we don't understand. Decker sighed. We need to consider every option. If this thing is a threat, we have to be prepared for the worst. Park hesitated before speaking. Sir, there's another problem. The energy readings we picked up before we left the anomaly, they weren't static. Carter turned to her. Meaning? She swallowed. They're moving. She tapped on her pad, and the holographic display shifted, showing multiple distortions appearing along the outer edges of space. Whatever this is, it's not staying in one place. The room went deathly quiet. Whitmore's voice was firm. We need to decide now. Do we try to communicate, or do we prepare for war? Decker looked at the officers around him. And how the hell do you fight something that doesn't fight back? Carter's voice was grim. You don't. Whitmore turned to. Can your people help us? The leaden's eyes darkened. My people do not wage war against the Ward. Decker exhaled sharply. Then it's up to us. He turned to the council. We mobilize every ship we have. If this thing is coming, we need to be ready. Carter stared at the map, watching as the anomalies spread. The enemy had no face, no ships, no demands. It was something else entirely. Something that had already decided the fate of the Terran Republic. The war room was silent, save for the distant hum of starship engines and the soft flicker of holographic projections. Admiral Decker stood at the head of the command table, his fingers gripping the edges as he stared at the tactical display. The shifting anomalies were spreading, their eerie distortions creeping toward space. Every few hours, another outpost went dark. No distress calls, no signs of better, just silence. Across from him, Ambassador Whitmore rubbed her temples, exhaustion evident in her expression. The weight of the moment pressed down on them all. Carter leaned against the bulkhead, arms crossed, his face a mask of grim determination. It's getting worse, he said, his voice low. We're not just losing systems. We're losing people. Entire populations, gone without a trace. His eyes flicked to Decker. If we don't act now, there won't be a republic left to defend. The representative sat calmly at the end of the table, watching the humans with the quiet patience of someone who had already foreseen this outcome. You cannot fight the unknown, he said. His voice was steady, but there was something almost mournful in his tone. We warned you before. This force does not negotiate. It does not conquer. It consumes. Decker exhaled sharply. So what do you suggest? Sit back and watch as it wipes us from existence. He gestured to the map. We've lost 12 colonies. We can't afford to lose 12 more. Elongated fingers tapped lightly against the table. You misunderstand. This is not a war you can win with fleets and weapons. The answer lies not in battle, but in understanding. You must look beyond your fear and ask, why is this happening? Park, the lead intelligence officer, hesitated before speaking. We've been analyzing the energy readings from the anomalies. They follow no discernible pattern, no recognizable physics we've encountered. She glanced at. But there is something strange. Whitmore lifted her head. What kind of strange? Park swallowed. The energy signatures, they're responding to us. Not in a hostile way, but as if they're studying us. She tapped on her, and the hologram shifted to show waves of data. Each time a fleet moves closer to one of these anomalies, the patterns change. It's almost like they're learning. Decker frowned. Learning what? Park's voice was cautious. Us. Our movements. Our technology. The way we react. Carter's expression darkened. Then we're giving them exactly what they want. A heavy silence followed. It was Whitmore who spoke next. If this is intelligence of some kind, if it's aware, then we have to change our approach. We keep treating this like a war, but what if it's something else entirely? Decker clenched his jaw. And what if you're wrong? What if this thing isn't just studying us? What if it's hunting us? Sighed, his gaze distant. That is the question only you can answer. A sudden alert flashed across the holographic display, drawing everyone's attention. A priority distress signal. Carter pushed off the bulkhead, moving toward the console as Park pulled up the transmission. It's from Outpost Helios, she said quickly. One of our last defensive stations before the core worlds. The room tensed. If Helios fell, the anomalies would be within striking distance of Earth. Decker straightened. Put it through. Static filled the chamber for a moment, then a panicked voice broke through. This is Helios command, requesting immediate assistance. The anomaly is expanding. A deep, pulsing hum reverberated through the transmission, and the voice faltered. It's not an attack, no weapons, just light, sound thoughts, a choked gasp. It's inside our minds. The signal cut out. Silence fell. Carter exhaled, his fists tightening. We need to go. Now. Decker nodded. Scramble the fleet. We're making our stand at Helios. Rose slowly. A stand against what, Admiral? Decker met his gaze, unyielding. Against whatever's coming. Studied him for a long moment, then gave a slow nod. Then may your war be swift. Without another word, he turned and left. Whitmore turned to Decker. If this is a mistake, if we're responding with force to something we don't understand. Decker's voice was cold. Then we'll die on our feet. The fleet mobilized. Warships roared to life, engines burning bright against the void. Carter stood on the bridge of the ironclad, watching as Earth faded into the distance. He had no idea if they were about to save their people, or doom them all.